In today's video, I'm going to put together the Sea Glass Summer Folio. I wanted to give you a quick look at the kit here before I started working on it. Everything you see in front of me is included in the kit. I've already fussy cut all of the pieces and inked the edges, so I'm ready to assemble the folio. Welcome to another Phantom Charm Studios tutorial. My name is Tammy, and I'm a longtime paper crafter and scrapbooker. On this channel, we talk about junk journals. If that sounds good to you, please subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so you'll be notified when I upload new videos. Let me move all of this aside and give me some room, and I'll be back with the main pieces that make up the folio. Here are the pieces that we need to assemble the folio. This is the cover that I've chosen for mine. There are two covers included in the kit. The first thing I want to do is grab my scoring board so that I can score and fold the cover. Once I know where the fold lines are, I'll know where to glue down the pocket and the half circle flap. I've printed all of the pages for the folio on cardstock, so it's going to be easier for me to add the score lines so that when I'm on camera here, I'll know exactly where to fold. There are fold lines built into this cover for you. It's the darker lines here on the front. I'm just using my scoreboard to score. I'm not looking at the measurements across the top and measuring anywhere in particular. All I'm doing here is lining up the fold line to a groove on the scoreboard and adding a score line. Here on the cover, I need to add 4 score lines. I think I've got this first fold line where I want it. So using this bone folder that came with my board, I'm using light pressure to add a score line. This cardstock I'm using is not super heavy, so I don't want to crease the paper too much. I just want to give myself a little bit of a guide on the other side so that when I turn this over, I can see where to fold. So again, I'm not looking for measurements across the top. The only thing I'm doing is lining up the fold line with a groove in the board so that I can score this piece. If you don't have a scoreboard, that's okay. It's not required. You could just run a bone folder down the fold line with a ruler and enough pressure to make an indent that you can see on the other side. I'm not really sure that you can see these creases on camera, but these fold lines will create gussets for some extra room in the folio to fill it up with ephemera and journaling cards. I want to do the same thing with this piece. This will create a pocket and the half circle is going to be a flap. I'm just lining up the fold line with a groove in the board and using light pressure to make a score mark. That's all I need my scoring board for. Oh, I did add score lines to these other folding note cards as well. You can cut these into separate pieces if you want, but I folded mine and I will keep the pieces together. I'll show you what I'm doing with these a little bit later. Let me put the scoreboard away and we'll start assembling these pieces. I'm going to start with the cover first. By the way, this wave pattern is one of the pattern papers that come in the kit. Once the folio is put together, there's very little of this side that won't be covered, but I like to have something printed on both sides. If you don't want to print on this side, you don't have to. You could also print one of the other patterns, or you could print something neutral from your own stash. I'm going to go ahead and make all 4 of the folds in my cover now so that when I start adding in the pockets, I'll know where to glue them in. I'm just finding my fold line here and I'll fold the first crease and then I'll find my second score line and I'll fold the second crease. There are 2 score marks here that create the cover flap, so I'm going to find both of these score lines and we'll fold both of them over as well. All of these fold lines are creating gussets that are built into the folio so that there's plenty of room here to add in all of the ephemera and the pockets and the tags and anything else you want to add, like photos and journaling cards and memorabilia. At this point, if you wanted to add a closure, you could do it now. 2 pieces of Velcro would work to keep the folio closed. You could maybe add a button and wind some string around the button to keep it closed. Mine is going to sit inside my sea glass junk journal, so I'm not going to add any kind of a specific closure on this one for now. I'll do it later if I feel like I need to once I've filled it up. So now that we have our folds created in our cover, I'm going to add the fold over in this piece that will create a pocket and a flap inside the folio. This flap will open up from the left side of the folio. On this side, we're going to see this pretty sunset scene on the beach, and on the other flap, we'll add this pretty hibiscus flower in this peachy color. I want to go ahead and glue this down right now before we do anything else. I fussy cut all of these elements. I did not use a Brother Scan and Cut or any of the electronic die cut machines. When you fussy cut things, you don't always get crisp, clean edges. If there's any trimming needed, it's easier to trim them now before we glue this pocket into the folio. I'm using my Fabri-Tac glue. I like this one because it does not warp your paper. I'm adding glue around the outside edge and a little bit in the center. When you glue this down, you want to glue it against the edge of the fold line. You don't want to glue on top of that fold line. Because I've already added that fold, I can see the edge I'm trying to steer clear from. I don't want to have any issues moving this flap back and forth. And you can see now that I've glued the pieces together, there is a bit of a gap on this fold line. One way to fix that would be to print a pattern on the back side of the paper. That way, when you glue the hibiscus flap down, this part wouldn't be white. It would be whatever pattern you printed. Checking on this side, I'm actually not getting a lot of overlap here. There is a little bit though, and I think I'll be able to cover this up with Distress ink. I'm still using the frayed burlap distress ink from Tim Holtz. I'm just going back over the edges with ink to see if I can cover up any of the white bits that are showing. I think it's going to be good on this side. I don't think that I need to do any trimming over here, but it's still good to check this before you glue it down because it's easier to trim these edges before you glue anything into the folio. Let's see what this side looks like. This little bit is more than what I saw on the other side, so let me grab my scissors. I'm going to go ahead and trim that off because that edge will be harder to cover up with the ink. Once that is trimmed off, I'm coming back with my distress ink and I'm inking around the edges on the side to blot out any of the harsh white overlap. See that white edge when this would be folded over? I'm going to ink this as well. You definitely cannot cut this. This is the fold for the flap. If you trim this, you're cutting the flap away from the pocket, so definitely don't cut it. Again, if that kind of thing would bother you, print something on the back side of the page to cover up the white. There's another bit up here that I'm going to trim off, and a little inking cleans up that edge. I'm going to take my ink and see if I can blot over the harsh white edge. If you have any distress pens that Tim had a few years back, you could color over the white with a pen in the same color as the distress ink you're using. I may do that later myself, but for now, I'm fine with how this looks. The inking really does blot out that white edge, so it's not as harsh. Now this is ready to glue down to the folio. This piece will be glued down as a full-length pocket. I need to do the same thing here when I glue this down. I want to make sure that I'm gluing on the edge of the fold line. I don't want to glue on top of that fold. You want to line the pocket next to the fold so this pocket does not interfere with the gusset we created earlier. I'm going to grab my glue and add the glue to the cover side. I want to make sure the glue line is not going over that fold line. And I just have a very small bead of glue here. I don't want a ton of glue. I'm gluing the bottom and back up the other side. Remember, this is going to be a pocket, so I'm not adding any glue at the top or in the center. When I adhere my pocket down, I'm making sure that I'm not going over that fold line. That's the important part, making sure that you can still fold the folio. And now I have a bit of overlap on the front side, and that's okay. I'd rather clean this side up than glue the pocket in a way that interferes with the fold line. All I need to do is trim off this overlap. With my scissors, I'm just trimming that white edge off. If the white edge doesn't bother you, you can leave this alone. And you don't have to worry that you're cutting into the image on the other side. All we're doing is trimming off a tiny bit. You're not losing any of the image. Because this is fussy cut and handmade, it's really hard to have perfectly aligned edges. There's always a little bit of trimming to do if you don't want the harsh white overlap. I'm going back in with my Distress ink to ink the edges I just trimmed off. Next, we're going to focus on the other side of the folio. This is the pocket that will go on this side. And this is why, again, I wanted to print one of the patterns on the back side of the folio. This pocket does not cover up this whole side, so that background pattern will show through a bit. If I hadn't printed the wave watercolor background, all of that area would be white. I'd rather see a pattern there. There are several other patterns in the kit you could use, or you could print one of your own favorite patterns that you already have. My intent for this pocket was to add these trifold note cards. There are two different sets in the kit, and these long note cards with the tabs at the top will also fit in this pocket. Because there's going to be several things that come in and out of this long pocket, when I glue this down, I'm not going to attach the side closest to the fold line of the cover flap. I'll add glue down one side and along the bottom, and the rest of it will be open. And remember, when we glue this pocket, we want to be mindful of the middle gusset. And I want to make sure that this side gets glued to the right side of that fold line so that this pocket does not interfere with the middle fold section. Like I did before, I'm going to add glue directly to the folio to make sure I'm keeping the glue clear from the fold line. And I'll add a thin bead of glue at the bottom as well. I'm going to leave the rest of it open for whatever I want to slip into the pocket. Once you get that glued down to the cover, just make sure you're able to fold both creases in the middle section. There are a couple of different treatments for this pocket. There are 3 different solid strips like this that you can add to the front of the pocket as a belly band. It looks like I made this a tad too wide for the pocket, so you just need to trim off the end. This gives you a place to slip in tags and journaling cards. The other option is this slanted pocket with the waves and beach. This gives you another pocket with more options to slip in tags and journaling cards. I'm going to do the same thing with this pocket. I'm going to glue this down to the side and the bottom, leaving the side closest to the cover flap unglued. That will give me a little leeway to get things in and out of the pocket. I'm just going to smooth down all the edges and make sure the glue is getting into the paper fibers. And now I'll have another space to tuck in the cards and ephemera. And we're not done yet. There are 2 other pockets I've included that we can add to this area on the other side of our flap. I thought that the images on here were so pretty that I didn't want to cover them up. So these pockets are the same as the image underneath. When you glue them down, you're not losing the prettiness of these beach scenes. You'll have even more room to add in tags and journaling cards, but these pockets are almost hidden because they will go right on top and you'll still see the full image. I'll add a bead of glue to 3 sides of this pocket, Glue this one down all the way over to the left edge of the folio and give yourself about 1/4 inch from the bottom. It will stop short of the right edge, so the pocket will not mess with the fold lines of the flap. You can see when this is glued down, it lines up with the face. Just press that down to make sure the glue is getting into the paper fibers. This is a cute shallow pocket, perfect for tucking ephemera into. Clean up any glue that seeped over the edges because we don't want these pages to stick together. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the pocket for the other side of the flap with the sunset beach scene. This pocket is a little deeper, so you'll be able to add some of the longer tags and cards included in the kit. I'm adding a bead of glue around the outside edge with none at the top and none in the center. This one aligns all the way to the bottom corner, and you don't have to worry about the fold. If there's any overlap on the other side with white edges showing, just trim that off and ink around any edges that you've cut in the same way I showed you earlier. And now we have pockets on both sides of this flap that you can add tags and journaling cards to. And don't forget about the full length pocket on the left side. That is the basics of the Sea Glass Summer Folio. Like I mentioned before, there's plenty of room inside the folio to fill it up with goodies, and this cover will just fold over. Make sure you add some kind of a closure if your plan is to use it on its own. I'll show you that my intent is to add my folio inside the Sea Glass junk journal. I have a pocket that's big enough for the folio to slip into. If you missed the video where I added all the pockets to my journal, I'll link that video down below. So my folio is going to go inside this pocket, and this is why I probably don't need to add a closure to mine. It's going to stay closed inside the pocket, and I will leave it here inside my junk journal. And now the decorating of the folio is up to you. I'm going to go fill mine up off camera, but I will be back to show you the finished folio in a video later in August when I work on the last few spreads of my Sea Glass junk journal and we finish out the series. Don't forget to check the links in the description box below. We have links to our Etsy shop as well as an exclusive coupon code only available on our YouTube videos. I uploaded a Sea Glass freebie on our Ko-fi page that makes 2 stuffed pockets. So come follow us on Ko-fi and download our freebies. Thanks so much for crafting with me today. I'll see you in the next video.